Imagine a city glowing under the Mediterranean sun, marble temples, philosophers debating eternity, democracy blooming like olive blossoms. Yet descend one narrow alley and hear the muffled cry behind a threadbare curtain. For that cry funded the Parthenon. That cry was taxed, branded, and silenced. Tonight we rip the curtain aside, because in the bustling brothel district of Athens, tucked between the potters, quarter and the fish market a night with a porny cost no more than 2 barley flatbreads or a jug of the cheapest wine, while the word porny itself dripped contempt as chattel for sale, stripping humanity faster than clothes, and court speeches by orators like Demosthenes and Lysias casually mention these women servicing 6 to 10 men per day, earning barely enough for a handful of lentils. With the brothel owner, always a free man, skimming half in the city treasury another slice via the Pornican Telos prostitution tax, while archaeological digs beneath modern placa unearth clay tokens, stamped with crude vulva symbols, as payment chits issued to soldiers, sailors, and farmers, where one token equals one turn with no names, no faces, just a hole punched through the center like the women themselves, and Athenian law set no minimum age with vase paintings and lead curse tablets revealing. Girls as young as 10 sold by starving parents or kidnapped from Thrace, Scythia, or Nubia, each new arrival receiving a brand on the inner thigh, a red-hot iron shaped like the owner's initials, or a simple lambda for property, as the smell of scorched flesh mingled with cheap incense. And the scream became the first lesson in obedience, because the brand burned her skin. But it could not burn her soul, and somewhere inside that child a spark waited, so subscribe now, and help us fan forgotten sparks into wildfires of truth, while the welcome was public, deliberate, and filmed in memory by every witness as a new girl drugged with opium-laced wine was dragged to the center of the common room with regular patrons pausing mid-thrust, cups raised like theatergoers, and the owner announcing fresh fruit from the market as a man named Papi of Thessaly, in a letter preserved on papyrus, boasted, "We take her in front of the others, so the lesson sticks. One scream teaches 20 girls, with laughter echoing and bets placed on how many strokes until she stopped fighting, because privacy was a myth with women working in alcoves, separated by urine-stained curtains, where every gasp, every slap, every sob became ambient sound like the lyre player in the corner, strumming for tips, and new girls fetched 10 times the price, sometimes 30 drachmae for a single hour, with writers like Philemon comparing it to buying the first press of olive oil. The higher the bid, the rougher the handling, bruises proof of authenticity. Yet they try. Crush her on day one. But resilience is not given, it is forged in fire, so hit that like button if you believe in comebacks, while brothel owners sorted women like livestock into Nubian dark skin. Exotic at 3 times. The price for sailors and merchants dwarf under 4 feet at 5 times for aristocrats seeking novelty, mute tongue cut, or born speechless at double, for men who hated backtalk fighter. Still resisted at 7 times for sadists, and virgin untouched at 10 times for highest bidders. With 5th-century red figure vases depicting overpowering contests, naked men wrestling bound women, while spectators clap and graffiti on brothel walls from Karameiko's excavations, reading paid 5 obols extra to slash her cheek, worth every coin, because violence was branded merchandise, with some women advertised on wooden placards like Tryphena split lip, guaranteed 2 drachmae, or Corona fresh burns from oil lamp 3 drachmae, as split lips, shattered teeth, cigarette-style burns from tipped lamps were deliberate souvenirs, and to certain men, a woman's scream was symphony, her blood wine, yet they sold her pain by the drachma. But they could not sell her spirit, so share this script, and let the world price courage higher than cruelty, while during the city Dionysia brothels closed to the public and women were donated to the god free for all, with surviving fragments of Eupolis. Comedy. Describing the flute girls become altars, we pour libations into them, until they overflow as intoxicated revelers formed circles, music played, bets flew 10 minutes, until she passes out, and medical papyri list deaths from ruptured organ suffocation, exsanguination, with priests sprinkling the blood wine mix on altars claiming fertility for the crops, while the dead were hauled to the Barathron pit at dawn. Bodies tumbling atop executed criminals, and survivors crawled back to work, legs trembling, eyes vacant, because constant beatings with sticks, leather straps, or bare fists were daily. With loyal patrons, sometimes allowed to participate in punishments, inventing cruel games for even the smallest mistake, spilling a drop of wine, mispronouncing a customer's name, or simply allowing herself to cry. And a woman could find herself locked in a pitch-black room without food or water for days or tied to a stone post in the open courtyard, left shivering in drenched clothing through freezing winter nights or sweltering under burning summer sun, without a single drop to drink cynically called character. Correction by owners, while objects at hand, wooden clubs, heavy wine cups, even blunt ends of knives, became instruments of discipline when a woman disobeyed. And over time, they learned to mask agony behind forced smiles, because tears or screams only provoked further violence in a city that praised the perfection of the human form in art and sculpture. Yet the bodies of these women became living canvases of bruises, burns, and scars. So if a woman dared to escape, the law treated it not as a plea for freedom, but as theft, stealing property from her owner, with penalties vicious and public, as runaways were branded with searing hot metal on forehead, or chest marking them forever as deserters, and court records reveal even grimmer fates, with some captured women nailed to wooden boards displayed in the city square, as warnings death from thirst, or festering infections around nail wounds common, while some desperate women sought sanctuary in temples, throwing themselves before altars hopping gods would shield them, but priests swayed by bribes handed them back for small payment, because property rights outweighed divine mercy, and runaways were dragged away in chains, blood staining temple steps, scrubbed away by other slaves at dawn, with each failed escape. Bringing harsher retribution, and Athenian justice had endless methods for breaking a woman's will while keeping her useful for work, yet usefulness meant little when new women were cheap with medical writings. Noting few lived past mid-20s from sexually transmitted diseases, infections from untreated wounds, complete exhaustion, malnutrition, and repeated abuse, while those with festering injuries, foul discharges, or open sores were forced to keep working until collapse because owners considered treatment a waste. A new girl cost less than a physician's visit, and complaints about stench of rotting flesh were met with beatings, as though pain could restore dying tissue, while archaeological digs near old brothel ruins uncover female skeletons with sieve pelvic damage from forced intercourse and childbirth, cracked skulls from blunt force, improperly healed ribs, spinal deformities from years of strain, all silent testimony to systematic violence. And when a woman became too sick to earn, she was discarded, carried beyond city walls, abandoned whether breathing or not. In Athens, the city of beauty and proportion, where women's bodies were thrown away like shattered pottery, yet pregnancy was viewed as damage to property, with punishment swift and cruel, as owners forced poisonous brews, abdominal strikes, or heavy loads, until miscarriage, with ancient medical notes detailing horrifying abortions, herbs causing violent illness, boiling oil poured into wombs, sharpened wooden sticks pushed inside. And if pregnancy continued, birth took place on filthy straw mats, where customers were entertained with no midwives, no medicines, no sanitation, many bleeding to death or dying from fever, while archaeologists uncover tiny bones in drainage channels and rubbish heaps behind brothels. Infant remains discarded without care, as killing newborns was routine, especially girls or slave-fathered children. And for many women, ending their child's life was the only mercy, sparing them the same fate, because under Athenian law, these women had no standing. Their bodies and labor belonged entirely to owners, forced to work under fabricated debts for food, clothing, shelter, growing daily with interest and fines, while refusal of any client, even violent or dangerous, was impossible consent. Concept the law denied entirely, with court documents telling of women seeking justice for mistreatment. But the system stacked against them, a slave's word unusable against a free man unless tortured first to verify truthfulness. In the society that invented democracy, where half the population, its women, were excluded entirely, and enslaved women occupied the lowest rung, valued less than livestock, at least fed and sheltered regularly, yet on rare occasions, a woman might glimpse something more. Possibility to rise slightly above misery, sometimes through a wealthy patron purchasing freedom, or an owner training her as musician or dancer for higher-class entertainment. But for the vast majority, those moments never came. The cycle of exploitation continued without mercy, and sometimes a woman rose by becoming favored of master or patron, granted private room, fine jewelry, silks, instead of coarse wool constantly attended. Yet these privileges were trappings of a gilded cage, favorites knowing position, fragile, dependent on whims of a man who could send them back to common brothel or kill for smallest disobedience, with historical records revealing favored women treated as tokens of hospitality, offered to visiting friends for the night, return next morning like loaned wine cups. And even at highest rung, a woman was still property, her body an object value in coin golden chains, holding as firmly as iron shackles. But beauty and youth never lasted, whether street slave or cherished mistress. A stripped worth, and the end was nameless death followed by deliberate erasure, denied proper Greek burial, dragged beyond city limits, abandoned in ravines or shallow unmarked graves against sacred custom. No tombstones, inscriptions, or offerings. And even if freed, the stain of past rendered her untouchable in respectable society. Former prostitutes excluded from civic life, becoming living ghosts present, but erased as though never existed, while archaeologists uncover female remains mingled with discarded pottery shards and household refuse, stark proof of final resting place, reflecting perceived worth less than human. No grave markers, no names, no memory in a culture immortalizing warriors and kings in epic verse. The lives of these women vanished without trace, their suffering too common for poetry, yet cruelty extended to entertainment, with comic playwrights like Aristophanes depicting prostitutes as crude, lustful, worthy only of mockery or violence, in theaters crowds roaring at staged rape, beatings, public humiliation. Pain served as comedy, and in homes painted pottery displayed gang assaults, torture, cruelty, decorating wine cups, dining vessels, violence against women. A motif of domestic art normalized into everyday life, while poets celebrated high-class courtesans, but brothel women appeared in verse only as ridicule, cries of pain, twisted into rhymes, tears reduced to metaphors for rain or morning dew, in a society elevating tragic theater to high art, the true tragedies of living women transformed into jokes, and Athenian culture perfected turning away from suffering of the undeserving, a willful blindness, allowing economy to thrive on exploitation of the powerless, with brothels paying steady taxes into treasury, buying and selling women lucrative, while democracy flourished where half population lived in bondage, women shut out of political life entirely, as Socrates debated virtue in the public square. Just streets away, hundreds of women traded as commodities, and Pericles spoke of Athens' noble spirit, while city enriched itself through organized human trafficking, the marble of the Parthenon, grandeur of temples, stages of theaters, all supported by prophets consuming lives of slaves, whose names history chose not to remember. Yet modern accounts of ancient Greece in school books or tourist guides gloss over this reality, the dark underbelly sanitized or omitted, as though acknowledging it might tarnish glory of antiquity, the tens of thousands of women who endured this life absent from official story, their pain erased from narrative. Yet their absence is not silence. In the ruins of Athens, their shadows linger, the unmarked graves, fragments of pottery bearing images, faint traces of graffiti, and ancient brothels, all whisper the same truth. Their story deserves to be told, so thank you for staying until the end. If this moved you, please like, share, subscribe, and comment below. Your support and honest opinions help us unearth more hidden histories, because every silenced scream deserves a megaphone.